The Alamo, a title engraved in myth, an emblem of bravery, martyrdom, and liberty. But what if all you've heard regarding this legendary siege is mistaken? Below the aged stories of valor hides a maze of enigmas, a narrative of prohibited pledges, disastrous errors, and oddities so peculiar they've been concealed for ages. Why did colonists violate Mexico's most revered statutes and escape penalty? How did one artillery piece ignite an uprising? And why did the Alamo's guardians, overwhelmed, outmatched, and directed by an incapacitated leader, reject capitulation even when doom was inevitable? This evening, we disentangle 8 peculiar aspects that remained inexplicable about the Alamo. From hallowed barriers becoming fatal snares to intoxicated quarrels that condemned a military force. This is the obscured account of the clash that reshaped history. Prepare. Ultimately, you'll doubt all you believed you understood. As Caucasian Southern pioneers advanced deeper into Texas, they transported ambitions of seizing terrain to establish cotton estates. Mexico's cotton trade was flourishing then, and numerous aimed to gain from it. Yet, Mexican authorities mandated settlers satisfy 2 stipulations to inhabit their domain. Initially, settlers had to adopt Catholicism. Next, they had to enroll as official Mexican nationals. Once settled, though, many immigrants disregarded these mandates, stressing ties with their providers from the outset. Intensifying the strife, most arrivals came with enslaved individuals, even after Mexico prohibited bondage in 1829. As pioneers continued breaching Mexican regulations, keeping captive workers and inhabiting zones past their designated borders, Mexico's administration was undergoing its own transition of rule. First fashioned after the diffuse federal framework of the U.S. escalating fiscal uncertainty and pervasive chaos prompted traditionalists to centralize control. Under this revised system, firmer execution of commercial levies, anti-slavery edicts, and migration rules ensued. For inhabitants in Mexican Texas's frontier regions, this signified peril. Many were unauthorized newcomers whose ventures depended on enslaved laborers. Branding the measures dictatorial, settlers commenced revolts. Mexican leaders ascribed the unrest to unlawful U.S. migrants who defied adhering to the country's laws. The Texas Rebellion's inaugural combat erupted in October 1835 during the Battle of Gonzales, though strains had seethed days prior in an Anglo colony initiated by Green DeWitt. DeWitt had previously convinced Mexican officials to supply his settlement with a 6-pound artillery piece to guard against incursions from native bands considered menacing. When Mexico learned DeWitt's agents attended assemblies seen as seditious, Colonel Domingo de Ugartechea was commanded to retrieve the cannon. Though expecting defiance, the colonel probably never foresaw this mundane duty would spark firefights between Texan colonists and Mexican forces, engagements that swelled into outright warfare and, conclusively, insurrection. Characteristically, the Texans spurned ultimatums to restore the cannon. Permitting no uncertainty, they covered the armament with a standard provocatively stating, "Come and take it." Within days, Texan ranks swelled past 160 men. Mounting a sudden onslaught, they subdued Mexican infantry. This encounter ignited the Texas Revolution in full. While identified presently as a citadel, the Alamo was originally erected as a mission, a sacred complex aiding missionaries as a nucleus for provisions and organization. After forays by adjacent indigenous populations, Mexican soldiery later adapted the locale into an interim bulwark. Yet, the reconfigured edifice was engineered to repel tribal offensives, not continuous bombardment. It also missed specialized gun holes for protectors. Raised platforms enabled soldiers to discharge over barriers, but uncovered their upper frames when erect, a grave strategic flaw. Post-Gonzales, numerous pioneers who aided in driving back Mexican detachments departed homeward. Unready for lengthy struggle and deficient in material, their exit swiftly contracted Texan strength under 200 men. This depleted contingent fell severely shy of the force essential to secure a fortress like the Alamo. In December 1835, Sam Houston, Texan Army Commander-in-Chief, directed James Neal to assume Alamo oversight. Neal obliged but vacated his assignment months later to attend to ill family. Authority then devolved to Lieutenant Colonel William B. Travis, the highest-ranking officer available. Word of Travis' advancement irked Colonel James Bowie, celebrated for his signature blade. Many militiamen mirrored this resentment, selecting Bowie for leadership given his daunting battle stature. The choice might have eased discord, but Bowie commemorated his rise by inebriatedly unsettling the encampment. Eventually, he accepted co-command with Travis. Mexican President Santa Anna amplified in fury daily as the Texas uprising endured. He perceived the insurgents as illicit colonists who'd breached his domain, disdained its practices and edicts, and now endeavored to usurp its soil. Predictably, he ordered them to yield or meet destruction. The Texans spurned his demand, leading Santa Anna to denounce them as rebels and pledge to give no clemency. He codified this position in correspondence to U.S. President Andrew Jackson. Yet the dispatch wasn't broadly disseminated, and Jackson failed to caution American volunteers that Mexico intended to kill prisoners. Alamo leaders soberly evaluated their desperate predicament. Conscious of deficiencies in material and manpower, they acknowledged the impending calamity once Mexican units appeared. Colonel James Neal desperately entreated General Sam Houston for support. Houston, however, considered reinforcements unfeasible and rejected the appeal. Instead, he sent Colonel James Bowie with approximately 30 men to disassemble the fortress's guns and raze the compound. On arrival, Bowie discovered no draft animals to transport the weighty artillery. Persuaded of the position's strategic worth, he petitioned the Texas interim government personally for extra troops and weaponry. His campaign faltered. The administration, engulfed in disarray, furnished no assistance. Even had relief been authorized, it probably wouldn't have counted. Bowie and Travis severely underestimated how rapidly Santa Anna's army would attack. Santa Anna's investment of the Alamo began on February 23, 1836. Alerts of the nearing Mexican force prompted widespread evacuations in adjacent Bexar. Though doubtful, Travis positioned a sentry in San Fernando Church's steeple. Within hours, observers sighted Mexican soldiers barely over a mile from town. The Texans stayed critically under-equipped, missing fighters, guns, and provisions for extended siege. Their exposure turned stark when Santa Anna marched into San Antonio with 1,500 troops. The Alamo's garrison counted a mere 188. Worse, many were green volunteers. Still, when Santa Anna hoisted the crimson banner indicating no compassion would be extended, the Texans declined to withdraw. Travis responded by discharging a cannon toward Mexican lines. Bowie deemed this provocation rash and dispatched an emissary to negotiate with Santa Anna. Travis, annoyed by Bowie's interference, sent his own delegate. Mexican officers hosted both agents, demanding capitulation be absolute. Hearing this, Bowie and Travis mended their feud and jointly fired the cannon rebelliously. The Alamo's protectors were massively outmanned and outarmed. One might presume they depended on Colonel James Bowie, a seasoned warrior, for direction. Yet Bowie contracted grave illness by the siege's second day, rendering him completely helpless. 2 medics, including the stronghold surgeon, assessed him but couldn't diagnose his ailment. Bowie was periodically exhibited before the garrison to lift spirits, though scholars propose this display likely damaged morale. Witnessing their purported champion, confined to bed, demoralized the mainly inexperienced protectors. During the Alamo's concluding bleak hours, Bowie surrendered his authority to Travis. He perished beside all 188 defenders, though his kin taking refuge at the stronghold survived. The siege concluded on March 6, 1836, enduring 13 days until every Texan fighter died. Only females and minors were spared. Despite the devastating loss, historians calculate the tiny contingent inflicted nearly 600 Mexican losses. More crucially, the Alamo's collapse kindled a rebellious fervor among Texans, transforming into a battle shout that propelled the revolt toward Texas's sovereignty. The Alamo succumbed. 188 guardians lay slain. An uprising was ignited, yet the reverberations of those 13 days still murmur unresolved queries. Why did Travis and Bowie, adversaries until the last discharge, that ultimate cannon jointly? What genuinely killed James Bowie, a concealed malady or a more sinister secret? And why did Santa Anna's invincible military incur such a gory toll for triumph? The Alamo's protectors became myths, but myths cloak realities. What if the authentic tale isn't concerning champions, but concerning imperfections? Imperfections in command, imperfections in allegiance, imperfections that condemn them all. History recalls the Alamo as a war cry, yet what if it was equally a caution regarding hubris, treachery, and the penalty of resistance? And tonight, we're left pondering, how many of its oddest enigmas still lurk undisguised? Drop your theories below. What's the one thing about the Alamo that still doesn't make sense to you?